Hi, I'm Faye, and in this video we're going to see the exercise demonstration of figure drawing form. So in the previous video I talked about the key concepts. I also shared a few resources that I thought were good, and I didn't go very deep into exercises and how to practice, but that's today's video. If you've missed that video or you want to review, the links will be in the description. All of the resources will also be there, as well as the link to the form where you can submit your drawings for me to give feedback after you've done them. And remember to do active learning to study smart. And remember to use this guide in the way that you think will help you the most. But let's dive right in.
The materials are still the same: black pencil, printer paper, and references from the PostSpace website, link in the description. And before trying to break the form into volumes, it's very important that you know how to construct these volumes well. The main ones we'll be using are boxes, cylinders, and spheres, but you can use others such as pyramids, cones, and trapezoids. It might seem like a very basic step, but there's nothing easy about drawing in perspective. Trust me when I say that volumes alone can be hard, so to make the next steps as easy as possible, make sure you're well acquainted with the volumes. Draw-a-Box is an amazing website that you can use for that. I'm rotating the paper a lot because it's important to find a comfortable position to draw these volumes. I know it's annoying to look at, so I'll only do it here, but when you're drawing, I recommend doing whatever you need to make it more comfortable to you. Step 1 is to just break the torso and pelvis into basic volumes using the landmarks as reference points. Since everything is hard when it comes to form, I recommend starting by drawing on top of the reference. I'm using the collarbone or shoulders as the top of my box, side of the breast as one of the sides, the end of the ribcage as the end of the box, and the pelvis as sides of my second box. I'm also shading some parts of the box in the planes that are facing the viewer. After you practice drawing on top of references, you can draw by just looking at them, and there are a variety of ways in which you can do it. I showed you how to use boxes, but you can also use cylinders like I'm doing here. Notice though that I'm not using a perfect cylinder, I'm using a sort of squished cylinder, and I'm also drawing a center line of the ribcage because, especially for cylinders, I find that it is necessary. You can twist these forms, you can elongate them, so use these tools that you have at your disposal in the way that will help you the most. And here's another example. Now I'm using the classic oval in a bucket. This is the way that I prefer breaking the figure down into form, especially in this next step. You'll see this is the main way that I draw. However, depending on the pose, it might be more useful to draw it as a box or as a cylinder. It really depends on the perspective, and that's why it's important to draw in all these different ways for you to see which one is best for you to use in general and which ones are best depending on the situation. Now we're moving to iteration. In this case, I'm doing level 3 iteration, which is rotating the form and drawing from another angle. This level is easier to do in this step since you only have 2 volumes to worry about, so I recommend giving it a try as you cycle through the steps and advance in them. Next, I'm drawing completely from imagination, which is level 3. Again, I'm doing this more advanced level because it's easier with only 2 volumes. And I wanted to mention that you can also combine different volumes. You can see how I drew the torso as a box and then the pelvis as a cylinder. So again, use these tools in the way that will help you the most. In step 2, we're going to add the head, arms, and legs. And we're going to use wrapping lines to help us figure out the direction of the limbs. So if it's facing away or towards us. You can see I'm drawing in this way that Michael Hampton uses a lot because I find that it's the easiest for drawing from reference. You can copy his or mine demonstration first so you can understand how it's done. I was only able to draw the form well after I had copied his drawing. For the limbs, I start with a gesture that will serve as a reference point for my cylinders. You can also taper the cylinders into boxes like I'm doing in this case, and you can also do the head as a cylinder, but you can use a box too if you prefer. As you add bulk to the body, it's common that it will get stiffer. It's a good thing that in the previous video about gesture, we saw how to make our drawings less stiff, and that was with exaggeration. So for this iteration, I'm doing level 2, which is applying changes that, in this case, are exaggerating the pose. Remember all we learned about movement and flow and try to apply it here. Now I'm going to draw from imagination, and this is level 3 again, so drawing without any reference. I struggle a bit with the leg, as you will see, but it's normal you struggle with any exercise you do from imagination. I actually recommend you do a lot of recall and mash up of references, which was level 1 and 2 imagination. I think those are the best to focus on to help you build your visual library of the figure and how it works in 3 dimensions. Step number 3, we're going to look at the hands, feet, and joints to complete the figure. We're also going to see how they all connect and intersect. I recommend starting with focus studies of the hand and then the feet. For the hand, I like to start with the boxy end of the wrist. Next, I'm starting with the rounded mass that leads into the thumb. Then I'm drawing the rest of the box that will be the palm of the hand. Now I'm thinking about how I'm going to intersect a cylinder for the first phalange of the thumb into the oval that we drew earlier. With each knuckle, the wrapping lines usually change direction, so pay attention if it's facing away or towards you. For the fingers, I'm starting with a sort of fan shape that indicates the angle of each fingertip. And then I'm going to draw the gesture for each finger in the general position where I think they should go, but these are just general, not final positions yet. Then I'm drawing the cylinders for the phalange. Notice how I'm changing the direction on each knuckle based on what I can see in the reference. And after, I draw the cylinders in the correct position and go back to adding the wrapping lines. Now let's see how to draw the feet. And again, I'm starting with the boxy end of the ankle and drawing part of the leg. Then I'm going to extend the cylinder for the leg into the foot. I'm going to add a ball or sphere for the ankle, and then from the ankles to the thumb, there's a rounded mass that you could break into a trapezoid, but I prefer to use this more organic and rounded shape. But try drawing with the trapezoid and see if that works for you. The rest is the same as the hands. I'm drawing cylinders and sometimes noodles for the toes and indicating the direction with wrapping lines. We know how drawing hands and feet is hard, so practice a lot. Go through copying demonstrations, doing iterations, and drawing from imagination so you really understand how to do these parts. After, you can do focus studies of the top half and then the lower half of the body, now focusing on the joints like the shoulders, elbows, knees, and ankles. Now let's go for a full body demonstration. I'm starting with the action line of the gesture because adding form can make the figure look really stiff. The shoulder line is my first landmark and I use it to draw the torso. I look for the center line and the end of the ribcage as my second landmarks. I like to indicate the belly button as well. And next, I'm looking for the sides of the pelvis, which will be my third landmark. And then I connect the torso with the pelvis. The analogy that is commonly used is a sack of flour, with how the weight is distributed due to gravity pulling it down. Then I'm going to find the gesture for the leg, and you can see here that instead of drawing cylinders and then the wrapping lines, I'm starting with wrapping lines and then drawing the rest of the leg. This is the way you're probably going to do final drawings, though just with a few less wrapping lines. Usually you're only going to draw wrapping lines around the joints. So it's good to try to draw like this to practice. Notice how I'm paying a lot of attention to where the leg intersects with the pelvis and what the joints like the knees look like in the direction they're facing. The rest of the body will all be done in this way. For iteration, I really recommend doing level 1, which is repeating the same drawing, trying to fix your mistakes. I'm not going to show it here for time's sake again, but you can see some examples. This last step is the longest one because you have to do like 5 different exercises for the different parts of the body, but it's important that you do so to really understand how everything works. And lastly, we can move on to drawing from imagination, and this is level 1, recalling without looking at the reference or the drawing you did. Again, I recommend doing it because you need to work on building your visual library. So I'm drawing the same pose we did earlier for exaggeration, but this was 1 day later, so I didn't really remember everything. It came out a bit wonky, but I still think it was good practice. To show you some of my old drawings so you know what you can expect. I started with following the Loomis book, but it didn't work very well for me. So I moved on to the RoboBeam from Proco, which is step 1 in this guide, and that worked a bit better. But step 2 really stumped me. Sure, I tried and sometimes it looked decent, but I was completely lost. So I just gave up and went to shading instead, which was a questionable choice. This all took me a few weeks, and then a few months later I came back to study the form. My step 1 was looking much better and step 2 wasn't that bad either. That's not to say that there weren't problems, lots of them actually, but after I tried copying Hampton's example, everything clicked for me. That's why it's important to copy. I was getting a better hang of it, and after a lot of iterations, I mean like a lot, and lots of analyzing too, I was happy with the way I was drawing the form. And in the next cycle, I went to work on my rotation. But I hope this shows you that you don't need to take forever to draw things in a way that makes you happy. All combined, this took 1 month, and of course the practice that I did in between the 2 times was helpful, and that's why I always tell you to study in cycles. So now try doing the exercises on your own and don't forget to submit them. If you do encounter any problems or have questions, please leave them in the comments below. And next week will be the final part of figure drawing, where we'll learn how to draw the complete figure. So make sure not to miss that. Anyways, if you found this video was helpful, please consider sharing, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. And thank you so much for watching.